I won't use Custer as an example because you know how that turned out. It started to sink like the Titanic, right?
No Michael Jackson.
I got a standing applause for the scene from the crew.
This is the big secret. You want the big secret, people? I'll tell you the big secret.
Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the legendary Lassie trainers from the world's most famous dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And Christophe Clugston, Jedi dog master, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now Robert and Christophe have joined forces, and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, finally, they're out of the shadows.
We're going to delve into something that is pretty important for the dog training world and for dog owners and just everybody in general who likes dogs, and that is looking at some things that went wrong on a movie set and how to cure that. I'll talk about that, and then we'll delve into Robert talking about when he worked on a film that he's well known for, Top Dog with Chuck Norris. That was his dog that's in every scene basically, and Betty is the name of the dog, and he will talk about how that dog faced really fire and also water, but fire is one of the biggest natural fears for all animals basically. And how he overcame that with the dog. And I'm going to talk about first, I will put this in the discussion box below. We could probably use it, film it, or play it right now as under fair usage, but just to save any copyright strikes or whatever that might happen. There's a TMZ video. It's very short. If you're just looking at the actual event, it's not very long, and I'll put that in the description box below. So people don't be so lazy that you don't go in there and take a look at the original. But I'm going to talk about this. The incident that we're talking about is there's a scene where a German Shepherd has to get into a raging river and get in the river and swim a ways and then get out of the river. Okay, number one, they didn't use a real river. They made an artificial event. It's at some wave park or something. As you can see, the German Shepherd does not want to get into the water. The trainer, or the handler in this case, I don't know if it was the primary trainer or just the handler, has a dog. The dog wants to escape. The dog does not want to be there. And he lowers the dog into the water. There's some audio where it's saying, "Oh, yeah, the dog knows that the water is not cold now." The dog doesn't want to get in the water, period. But it doesn't matter if it's warm or cold. And so he pulls the dog back out of the water, and then he tries to put the dog back in the water. The dog wants to escape again. And you hear this thing, well, he's just going to have to throw the dog in. And then it cuts to the dog is in the water and is swimming and is about to drown in the water. And 2 people who are in the same in the water containment thing are rushing over to grab the dog. Now, okay, millions of things are wrong here. Number one, I don't know how long they had for pre-production, and that obviously was some dog that was either loaned or was not a dog that's been used a lot for a lot of different scenes, because the dog is not habituated to water. So I'm not going to cover everything, but I'm going to describe to you what should have been done, not every step, but some, and you'll clearly know from this that I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So the dog was not used to water. Dog should have been habituated to water. The dog definitely is not ready for the rapids and all that water. That can be turned off in one of those pools that they're using. Dog was not used to the water in either case. They just tried to throw the dog into a really fearful for that dog situation. So lots of things. So number one, if you have a dog, like this had been Rin 1010, the dog could have done it because Lee Duncan would have gone through this, or the Lassie, we already know this too, pal. Those dogs have been in all these situations ahead of time, because anytime a script would call for this, they're ready for it. They're ready for it. But most trainers don't do that. They're borrowing dogs, and they're getting certain dogs ready for certain scenes, and so they have a limited amount of time. But a lot of if it's a big production, they got months, and you can do this. I can't say how long it would take me to get that German Shepherd ready, because I don't know that German Shepherd. I'd have to know that dog. but they didn't do anything right. So the dog was not comfortable being around the water. That's the first step, get him comfortable around the water. Then the dog is not comfortable getting in and out of the water. That's another step that has to happen. And there was no way out for that dog. That's something else. That's where panic's going to set in, just with like a human. They're in there and there's nowhere for them to swim. The dog didn't have a path, a route. And Robert will tell you this is key. We're giving out movie secrets here. You want to have the dog trained that goes in at A and goes out at B, and that this doesn't really change. This doesn't change, and you make this a pattern so the dog knows, and the dog can predict this, and the dog feels good. And the dog is not in a panic, I'm going to die at any moment because I don't know where the hell I'm going, because that's what was happening in this scene. So they didn't do any of those things, and this should have all been incrementally done in a progression where the dog is gone into water. It's in many different places, but this water, get ready for this scene. Do it with none of the rapid stuff, none of the turbulent water running at the time. Just still water, gets in, has a path, A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B. Then you start introducing turning on the turbulent stuff. And you make that pathway shorter to begin with, or just maybe in and out, like immediately in and out. And you sequentially build it so the dog starts having confidence, because it's all about having confidence in the scene to do this. Now, these people are professional movie dog trainers and handlers. They should know these things. I don't know why they didn't do this or why they selected this dog too. Another thing is also selecting a dog, because there are dogs that have zero fear. Like, for example, I have several dogs that have zero fear about getting in the water. Now, my super dog, he doesn't like it. I mean, he doesn't like to get wet. Now, he can do everything. Could I get him to do that stuff? Yes, but my way, not the way that they were trying to pull it off on the what you see there on TMZ. That's not how you do it. They took a lot of flack for this because this was filmed and it got released, and people were saying, "Man, you're mistreating the dog." And stuff. It's just a case of bad training, bad situation, bad selection of dogs. And I don't know that dog. Now, I have to be around the dog to know the dog, but how they went about it is completely wrong. I would call that really amateurish, and this is a production that had money behind it, and there are a lot of animals involved in the movie, so you would think this isn't just somebody's cousin doing it. Robert can delve into this, but that's my critique of this. Yeah, can it be done? Yes, it's been done many, many times. The way that they did it was wrong. The way they set it up is wrong. Their training for the event, they didn't seem to have any training for the event, which is what I'm saying. And they didn't select the dog. Now, I don't know again with the dog, but the dog has a fear of water. So, you know, you want to try to pick a German Shepherd, and there's ways to do that in pre-production testing, which if you have, like, they probably would have like 10 German Shepherds they were choosing from, and you choose the one that's going to have the least fear of water to begin with, just makes things easier. Okay, so that's my critique on this thing, and I'll come back later. But Robert, do you want to take it away on your take from this, and then also you can lead us into Top Dog?
Yeah. Well, having seen the movie, I was Dog's Way Home. Having seen the movie, I know that they used another dog for principal photography in the river. What they were doing there was like second unit shots. They'd already completed principal photography. Now they were doing some tight shots on swimming in the water. And maybe they wanted a dog that was not as good a swimmer. Maybe sometimes the directors will ask for a dog that isn't a good swimmer. So it looked like more of a struggle when they're swimming. My assumption of everything, having seen the TMZ videos and having worked on these kind of movies before, this was another dog, probably not even a backup, maybe a second backup or even further down the line. Might have been a dog they brought in specifically because he wasn't a good swimmer. But the problem with the shot, in my opinion, having seen it on the TMZ video, which went viral years ago, right after the movie came out, and of course they ended up going to a different animal supply company for the sequel because of the attention that they got, the attention through the TMZ video. But it was set up wrong. They pushed the dog. First of all, they probably should have gone back to a river, but they probably couldn't match it, so they just wanted to choose a side that you couldn't see that there were big walls on each side. That's a very big point. As soon as the dog got in there, that was like a funnel, like a flume. There was no way to get out. It's not like a normal river where you're looking and you're trying to get to the shore. there was no shore. So what you have to do is you teach a dog, like you said, you have to teach it on an A to B, and you start from the end to the beginning. As far as if you see in the video, you'll see the dog pushed over the ledge. So he lands awkwardly in the water from, I don't know how many feet, it must have been 4 or 5 feet at least, that he fell into the water. So already he's underwater and the water's already flowing. So as soon as he hit the water, he starts flowing into this flume, and then there's a wall at the end, and the dog actually hit the wall. I think that's all the video they actually shot. They could have avoided this and made it a very humane event, just an easy deal, by taking the dog and releasing him to a person at the end where that wall is. You could always block that person out, cut him out of the shot. You could show the water without showing the guy who's going to receive the dog. And then the sender has to bring the dog back maybe 5 feet and then release the dog to the receiver. Keep extending it until the dog is comfortable. And of course, like Christophe mentioned, you have to do it maybe with flowing water, and then maybe you can increase the current as the dog gets better and better at doing it. Because really, he knows, the dog by then, after having done it a few times, knows that he's going to be caught. Give him a little bit of hope. But then again, directors can be very intimidating. So it's possible the director wanted that. I've seen that happen where a director will say, "Oh yeah, I didn't heard it on the video." He said, "Oh, the dog's fine. Look, the director doesn't know the dog. That was the trainer's responsibility to protect the dog." I've done similar things like this. I did a scene with my dog Betty, and by the way, we used 3 dogs in Top Dog. It was one of the few movies where I think even Betty, though Betty was cast as the lead dog, we actually used the doubles quite a bit for different things like athletic things. That Betty wasn't super athletic, but she was well trained, so she did a lot of the tricks, whereas Digby stunt stuff and then real far away stuff we did with Rosie. But we did a scene where Betty had been shot, partner that the dog had before Chuck Norris took over. He and the dog were shot and thrown overboard down in San Diego. We were shooting in the harbor there where the Navy docks their ships. So it was pretty deep. And we went out in a rowboat, and I got in the water, and David Ellsbury actually handed the dog Betty to me while I was in the water. And then what I did is I just got away from out of the shot, and then they started rolling camera, and Betty started swimming. The thing is that Betty wasn't an excellent swimmer because of her hair. Her coat got really, bogged down. So what happened is she started to sink like the Titanic after, a short period of time. So I was always on the ready to dive in there and save her. But the director wanted more. This is great. Keep rolling. I'm like, no, my dog's about to drown. I'm going in to save her. This is my dog. This is not, has nothing to do with the movie. It's just about saving the dog. So I saved the dog. And I remember the director was kind of upset with me because I got into the shot and messed up their magic. But they ended up using the shot, and it looked just fine in the movie. That's one thing about Hollywood. They'll always tell you, perfect. It was perfect one more time. I'm like, well, if it was perfect, then why are we doing it one more time? But that's Hollywood, right? And no, the directors will try to push you. So when I look at TMZ video, I look at one, the trainers were probably intimidated a little bit by the director because they wanted to keep their job. And of course, so it's up to the trainer to protect the dog. I always felt like that was number one when I'm out there, because I'm putting the dog in a situation. It's just like when I was in the military in boot camp. I never know where I was going, how long I was marched, but it really wasn't up for me to know. But I trusted my drill instructor. I knew he wasn't going to march me off a cliff, right? So with Betty, it's the same thing. She has to trust me. She has to know I'm going to save her. I'm going to be there for her. There's no other option for me. The shot, like Christophe said, the shot was set up improperly. And I think that was on the trainers. They should have had a sender and a receiver in the water, and all that controversy could have been avoided. Wouldn't you say, Christophe?
You bring up some good points that about the directors or even people underneath the director who would be pushing the trainers, because on some shoots, they think that the animal trainers or handlers are less than extras. I mean, that's really. I remember the what's his face, the famous horror guy considered actors cattle, And even if they were great actors, they're just cattle. It's about the story. That's the most important thing. In this case, a lot of people treat the dog trainers, unless they're really famous dog trainers. For example, Rudd wasn't going to get pushed around once he got going. Lee Duncan wasn't getting. I'm going back, but Robert's dad was not getting pushed around. Carl Miller, after he just pulled stuff off, but he wasn't getting pushed around either. And it's a different story. I mean, this isn't my forte. This is Robert's forte, but I do know some things. And anyway, so Robert brought that up about their being pushed around, but they have the script ahead of time. All the head trainer has the script, and they know what scenes they have to specifically get ready for, because if you have some trained animals, they can already pull off certain scenes, like the A to B's, running down the alleyway, especially if you're just talking about one dog or maybe two dogs. This should be stuff that's already ready, like you can pull this off then, right when they hand you the script. Oh, yeah, I can do this. Now, again, I'm kind of jumping around, but the exceptional dogs like Pal or Rin Tin Tin, because he Lee Duncan never used stunt doubles, never. That's why, I mean, it's some amazing stuff, and also why these really few dogs that he ended up working with, really, I mean, he trained the dogs in the background too, but whatever, but they could do everything. And so they were ready. It was like, yeah, we can do this. That's how Lassie, Pal became Lassie, because he already could do this river crossing, which is what we're talking about, and that is the quintessential river crossing is in Lassie Come Home, and we've talked about that a little bit, and we'll talk about it again in the future. But anyway, I just want to say that they're getting pushed around, but they should have had the script. They should have known that this was a major scene. Now, Robert brings up a point, like maybe the director wanted a scared dog, and he wanted a dog that couldn't swim well. You can do those in isolation shots and edit those in. You can do that, because that's what you'll usually see. They do that with people, with the actors. That they may have a stunt people doing the swimming, but the close up is on the actor, and the actor's in a pool or something, acting scared. But with a dog, it's not acting if you really can't swim. If you put him in any amount of water, it's going to look bad. It's going to look desperate if that's what that director was going for. So you can do that. I'm always thinking of I want the dogs to do everything incredibly well. Do it. Even if they have to do it slower, if they have to do it fast, they still do it incredibly well. So I'm always thinking, the trainer. I'm always thinking trainer skill. That's where I'm at. And that's why we always talk about this, and it's always we bring things up. People, you can't attack us on trainer skill, because we just we got a lot of we're skillful. So I bring those points back in there, and a little bit. Robert kind of downplayed his Top Dog movie, which you can see, by the way. You can find that. I think it's even on YouTube. You can find the Top Dog movie with Chuck Norris. It's kind of, looking at it, it's like a mid '90s. I think '95 is when it came out, and you can kind of it's period piece for people, and of course mills and sub mills won't get anything out of it, but it's kind of cool to look back at that. You can see the difference in how people act and stuff. But the training that's going on in all the things, it's like seamlessly pulled off. I mean, it's Betty doing all this, and of course the big thing is, like, you're not supposed to believe that this dog is a police dog, and you don't. I mean, I was like, this premise is a little stretched, you know what I'm saying? And there's a couple scenes, like, this is movie magic here, when they have Betty out there trying to impress Chuck Norris, because he doesn't want to be around dogs. He doesn't want a dog as a partner. He's a loner, all this stuff, right? So they take him out, and he's a detective. I don't know. It doesn't even make any sense. He sees a liaison with the K9 unit or something. It doesn't make any sense in reality. But they take him out, and there's some German Shepherds and I think a Doberman, which the LA, or even they're supposed to be the San Diego Sheriff's Department. They don't use Dobermans, so that's a little inaccurate. But he's out there, has to go in and get a guy that's wearing a bite suit inside of a house, and he's throwing out a German Shepherd because the German Shepherd's not attacking him aggressively enough, and then Betty goes in there and beats the shit out of him, and then he's just screaming, running out the thing and jumping out the thing. He's, I will never work with that dog again. Stuffing's coming out of the bite suit. So, which is, I mean, that's really testing the bounds there, but there's and I want to bring up too, Robert, by the way, one of the things that's in that movie, when there's a basset hound in that movie too. At some point when there's a scene there that's like, oh, who's how much training went into the basset hound? I mean, it's just like the basset hound's just there. The scenes, obviously, Betty's not a bite dog, but it was seamlessly pulled off with movie magic there. But I mean, I was really kind of like, man, this is, this whole premise is kind of stretching it for a dog, me as a dog person.
Yeah, and then he emerges with the bag of drugs.
Yeah, and it just says like dope or something on it. You know what I mean?
Dope.
Like, like he's just, and then like Chuck Norris has no training as a handler, whatever. He's like, go find the drugs, marijuana, heroin, find it. It's like, oh my God, and it's like, it's like they're supposedly like, yeah, Betty has all these certifications. So a lot of places use dogs that are called dual certified, like they're apprehension dogs and they're locator dogs, but it's going to be for one type of narcotic or one type of food. It's not going to be for everything. That's just like, you don't have that. But supposedly Betty could handle everything, and I'm like, man, this is really pushing the limits here. I mean, they were expecting nobody to go there that knew anything watching the movie originally. Oh my God, this is the greatest dog on the planet. There is a good scene though, and maybe you could talk about this just as far as dog training, when Chuck Norris first has the dog, brings it back to his place. I don't know where these guys, they always find these places in big cities where they live. It seems like the countryside or something. Anyway, Chuck Norris is living in this place and everyone thinks it's run down or whatever, blah, 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 right? And Chuck Norris has bought himself a chicken, a rotisserie chicken, but he comes home with generic dog food that's like from China or something. You can see, or Korea. You can see the characters on the generic label. I don't know why that was thrown in there. But then he throws the can open for the dog to eat, and the dog doesn't want that food, And so the dog does a distraction or something, and Chuck Norris goes off to check out what was going on, and Betty grabs the chicken, supposedly eats all the chicken, which we don't talk about the chicken bones, I guess, at all. But then comes back, and Chuck Norris, of course, is really pissed off. He's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And then Betty pushes the dog food bowl over to Chuck Norris, which is a good. I mean, that's good training. I mean, that's a good. You don't see that much, So I was like, oh, there's a good point. So, and it's not the only time that she does stuff like that. But maybe you want to talk about that just a little bit because.
Yeah, it was and that scene, amazingly, Betty did part of that scene. Rosie did part of that scene, and Betty did the nudge, but Rosie did the shaking of the head. So, and of course, Digby, who we used a lot for the jumping in and out of the car, we couldn't use him a lot because in tight quarters with people because he was kind of a little jittery, and he actually bit a boy, the boy actor on the movie, and at one point. So he was always a little volatile, but he was the most athletic dog that we had. So we only used him for jumping in cars and out of cars, and Betty and Rosie did most of the tricks. Rosie was actually coincidentally Betty's half sister. They had the same mother. We both got him from the same breeder. And as a matter of fact, Betty was backed up by Rosie on Dennis the Menace as well, even though there was only one scene we even used Rosie for on Dennis the Menace. But that's kind of what got Betty the role. And she did have to do a scene in Top Dog where Chuck Norris is getting beat up by having a fight upstairs, and Betty has to do a sneeze and a yawn and all those kind of tricks because Betty had a lot of behaviors on her. Sneeze, yawn, crawl, wave. She spoke. She was a great speaker from pretty much anywhere. And she was the hardest dog in the world to teach initially, but once she had it, she was automatic. I remember we were working on that. I remember we mentioned that scene about we had the dog speaking, and we thought, oh, no big deal. The dog just has to speak. And then, because we're going to turn on the rain machines now. And the dog is out in the front yard. And I didn't even ask him. Mark Harden already knew. He was working with me on the movie, on Dennis the Menace. And the director said, can Betty speak from over across the street? And Mark Harden said, I think this dog can speak from anywhere. And she did. And then they turned on the water, and it didn't really affect her speak at all. But that's what we're talking about, is the conditions that you're working with dogs, whether it's water, fire, wind, gunshots, people fighting, whatever it might be. That's where the real skill comes in. Betty did do a scene, I think the most difficult scene in the movie. She had to get the notebook underneath some fire. So she had to retrieve, and she had to crawl underneath burning boards. And we had like 20 minutes to prep it, just get her used to the fire. She already knew how to crawl and to retrieve, so that wasn't an issue, but the going under that fire. So we did it, and there was a point where Betty almost bailed, where she stopped and thought twice, like, maybe I'm not going to go. And then I had to like really pitch up my voice and really just kind of almost threaten her to get through there, but encouragingly in a way, an encouraging, threatening kind of way. And she did it. And I remember I got a standing applause for the scene from the crew. The crew was like, wow, that was crazy. And I made sure that she always knew what to expect. But, when we're working with long-haired dogs, we had to use flame retardant on the dog, so that if like a spark or an ember flew down, it wasn't going to like catch the dog on fire, right?
No Michael Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. We're not doing any Pepsi commercials here. I always protected Betty, and when Betty was, I trained her, and I was the only one who worked her. I didn't let anybody else work Betty. She was a very soft dog, but I knew how to motivate her. And Mark Harden told me, he said, she's like working with a seal. It's all about food. Like everything's about food with Betty. If she's a little stomach's growling a little bit, it's amazing how much energy she summons when she's ready to, when she's working for something she cares about. And it could be anything, Betty didn't care much about balls and squeak toys and stuff. Yeah. So food was my savior. But that's not going to be the way every dog is. Right. Some dogs are going to be motivated in more, different resources. That's why when people say, oh, my dog, is aggressive, and I'm like, aggressive with what? Because anything can be a resource to a dog. It just depends on what kind of importance either you or the dog put on that item. And it could be a part of the couch. The dog could say, that's my resource, and then bite somebody when they try to sit there. Or it could be a toy, or it could be another dog or another person. Be aware of all these things. But I've always found that I can use a dog's fear if it's directed towards something positive, like a dog getting in a car that's never been in a car before. You put the person they love in the car first, and you open the other door so that they go through. They see, oh, that's my mom. She's going through the door. And then I'm the bad guy because they're afraid of everybody except their mom, right? So on the first lesson, we'll teach that, because now I can use just going behind the dog, and I can funnel the dog into the place they want to be. It's not traumatic. All we're doing is using the people around us the way they should have used the people in that river scene. They should have had somebody they went to. It was just like, easy peasy. I'm going this guy. He's going to catch me. He's going to reward me. He's going to love me. And then we'll do it again. And actually, the dog could end up finding it to be fun if it was done right. So I was just taking the long way around this TMC video thing. But I'll get back to you, and you can take it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, some important things to take from all of that is that the thing that Robert had going for him with Betty, and the same thing going. This is the big secret. You want the big secret, people? I'll tell you the big secret is the bond with your dog. Okay, because they trust. There's a trust. You have to trust. I've said it before. Believe in your dog. Believe in yourself. and that's the way to do it. And so you got to have this deep bond with your dog, and people will want to know what's the secret. I've mentioned things. Got to watch all of our video casts, piece it together, do consultations. I'm not here handing out 50 years of knowledge for just somebody who wants to come by who has got lazy and doesn't want to do any of the work. It's the thing that Robert had going on with Betty, thing that his grandfather had going on with Pal and Hey Hey and other dogs, and Lee Duncan with Renty number 1 and 3, especially 3. I will do later on. I will do a thing about Lee Duncan, but not now, people. And the thing is, the bond. They know the dog, and this is something that clearly that we haven't said straight out. But what's the deal? This is a dog that had no bond with any of these handlers or trainer. Guaranteed. Nobody had taken this dog home and worked with this dog. This is some dog that maybe they got on loan, right, Robert? Probably a loaner dog, and they just tried to pull off a scene with a loaner dog. The dog doesn't trust anybody there, and this, it's not going to happen. And this is the way not to get trust. Hey, I don't know. If you want to bring up military things, and you're up there, and there's somebody who's not the jump master, who is kicking you out of the C-130. You came up in the C-130, but you're not going down. You're not coming back in the C-130. But it's one thing to jump out of a C-130 with a jump master who's been with you for a few weeks, and then you're getting booted out one way or the other. But suddenly now you're somebody totally different, than the person that you've been in, and you've never been out, you've never left the perfectly good airplane for the perfectly onrushing ground. This is a different type of fear. So it's the same thing here with the loaner dog, but this is how, a lot of times things are done like this, and you just try to make the scene work, as Carl Miller would say. You just try to make the scene work. But this is something Robert's getting to, is the bond with your dog. And he was alluding to the fact with the pet dog, training the dog into the car. He's using the familiarity with the dog owner. And he's not taking an assistant with him who the dog doesn't know, for example. So this is a totally different thing. It makes we talk A to B. This step steeps into a lot of things, recalls and all sorts of things. But if he's using someone that the dog knows already, and especially has a bond with, and it better be a good bond, I'm not talking like an abusive bond or anything, then this facilitates the training, as opposed to him with an assistant trainer that the dog doesn't know either one of them. And then this is a different process, because you have got, I'm going on about this, but why am I capable of doing all the things that I can do? Why can nobody do the Jedi, Dog Master Challenge? And I'm going to say it every episode, everything, until someone steps up and isn't scared and shuts their mouth about their ideology and actually proves that they can train dogs at the same level I can. Why can I do it with a variety of different dogs? Why can I do it with an autistic dog that's 120 pounds and a super dog and some hunting dogs and a jungle dog? Why can't I do that? It's my bond with every single one of these dogs. Now, a lot of people, they want to complain and say, well, I can't do that. I can't invest the time. I can't do. Well, then you're never going to have the results I do. So, that's okay. Just admit you're not at my level. Don't act like you're a Formula One driver when you're having a problem with a shopping cart. You ride around those electric shopping carts at Walmart. That's the extent of your ability. I'm about to crash. They're going like, I remember Steve Martin did a thing where he was drunk and had a steamroller, and he was trying to show that his reflexes were impaired, and he couldn't stop the steamroller. It was going towards this guy. It flattens him, but they're showing it, the distance is like, then they show it from the side view, and he's like about 200 feet from the guy, and the steamroller is going about this fast. This is back when Steve Martin was funny, but it's the same sort of thing. If that's your limit of ability, you can't stop a steamroller at 200 feet. You can't handle a Formula One car at all. So don't get around them, and don't try to pretend. You can train dogs as well as we can. Just recognize and learn from us instead of getting in arguments with us or trying to diminish what we do, because that's how people do it. Or argue ideologies, argue results. Let's argue with results. That's what we want to see. But anyway, so we're saying that all this ties back into that TMZ thing because they should have known better. They should have known better on what to do. And you got to stand up too. You can't be bullied. Now, if they were first-time trainers and handlers, they're probably working for a company though, and they should have been, whoever's the coordinator, animal coordinator should have been in control of all that stuff. This is all Robert's stuff, but I know about all this. But he should have been in control of this and said, no, hang on, we need to do this and whatever. But this should have been rehearsed. It should have been rehearsed. It should have been done differently. Robert and I could have pulled that scene off with the dog. I mean, what do we need? We need, I don't know, just to be on the safe side. Depends. We don't know the dogs and stuff. 2 weeks, and you're going to have a perfect shot. First shot, it's going to be perfect. Or they may want to do others with, So, whatever. People, if you're seeing this and you don't think we can do it, pull us on a set. Pull us on a set. See if we can't do it. That. Come on. I dare you. Let's go. Okay. So anyway, Robert, that's anything you want to throw in there after I've thrown out the challenge?
No, I think that to me the underlying theme of this episode is really how training is a lot like electricity, about being able to run a line from one point to another point, and thinking about, okay, if they have to go around a corner, then you're running it to a point. And then you're running from that point to another point, because you can't just go around. Dogs don't think like that. They think in sections. So if I can get this far, then from that point, I can get to this other point. But we don't skip the points. We don't skip the middle second base to get to third base. And that's the electronics of training. Everything has to make sense to the dog. And it's like, why am I going between the couch and the coffee table? Because it's the only thing I've ever taught you to do. I'm not going to teach you any other way to get through that room other than going between the coffee table and the couch, because that's what the script calls for, right? So I'm not going to go around the coffee table if I want the dog to go between the couch and the coffee table. You have to lead by example. I won't use Custer as example because you know how that turned out, right? But I will say that leading by example with your dog is the way to go, because if you're not willing to do it yourself, most of the time, your dog's like, well, I'm not going to do it then. I mean, you won't even go there. You're afraid of the fire. You're afraid of the water. So why should I go there, right? So you have to show them, hey, this is okay. I'm standing in molten lava, and I'm not even melting that quickly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, if you're going to do a dog reenactment of Custer's stuff, we're going to definitely need a Chinese crested, you know how they look, right? People look the dogs up. If you don't know, we're gonna need.
Hairless.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We need the real Mexican hairless, which are not the Chihuahuas. They're slightly bigger. They're called with the X. It's an Aztec.
Yeah, it's too long. Sounds like the Cortez conquered.
Yeah. They do. There are some that are born with hair, and I was trying to get one. But they're really great dogs. But anyway, we need some of those dogs for the scenes. I could see Robert working with the Chinese crested right now. Okay, in this scene, you're going to come in here, and he's like, "Why am I chasing the Indians again?" And it's anyway. So because the dog looks like he's been scalped. That's the whole point. If you look at a Chinese crested. But anyway. Well, with that, people, this is the only podcast in Dogdom that's going to be talking about Custer's last stand, molten lava, and throwing out a challenge to bring us on set. Okay, so that's about it.